Safeties have become a forgotten position when it comes down to the NFL draft. But what does it say about the 2024 class? Is the free safety, the single high safety back? We're going to tell you next on the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson, always on the ones and twos. You can find and follow me on Twitter at DP_NFL. I'm a national scout over with the Draft Network, as well as the host of the Locked On Clemson Football Podcast. Guys, thank y'all for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every single day, Monday through Friday, being the family, being the fam, as well as being our every single day. And of course, the champ is here with me all the time, Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. My guy, Keith Sanchez, Mr. LSU. You can find him on Twitter at The Talent Code. Keith, talk to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? This is Keith Sanchez, senior draft analyst with the Draft Network, man, in 2019 college football national champ with those LSU Tigers, man. But you know why we're here, right? Myself, Damian Parsons, your dynamic duo. We are here to bring you that championship level content surrounding the NFL draft 24/7, 365. Yeah, I want you to tell me who you know is still going every single day during the month of July, man. We love this. We put our heart into it. We put our all into this, man, and we do it for you guys, man. Thank you for tapping into us in the month of July, right? August is about to kick up, right? And we have, training camps going on, but we are finishing out in DP. This is one of those, it's a sad moment, right? Because we're closing the scouting notebook after today, man. We've unleashed every position. I think we did between 10 and 12 episodes. We went through every position group, told you what guys we like, what guys we're not so high on. And we're finishing this thing out with the very back end of the defense, right? They talk about this is the security, the last line of defense, what some defensive coordinators call them. We're finishing out with the safety class, man. So DP, man, listen, we've been going through this thing and talking about, right, who is, safety one, tier two and things like that. But with safety is a more interesting conversation anyway, right? So I like how you set this up, right? And we're going to talk about free safeties at the top because there's a lot of free safeties, and we're going to talk about what do we mean by it's a lot of free safety. So let's kick this conversation off, DP, with just two names, and then what do you mean by free safeties at the top?
So the two names that come to mind after watching tape, the two names were Calen Bullock from USC and Kam Kitchens from the University of Miami, a.k.a. the U. And when I say free safeties at the top, and we've talked about this since we took over this pod, Keith, that the safety position evolved into, well, we're not looking for Earl Thomas and Ed Reed no more. We want guys to be versatile, to look a certain way and to be able to come down in the box, B+1, man up in the slot, right? But these are two guys that I think have the opportunity to kind of flip that car. We always know history repeats itself, right?
Right.
And when you have guys, the last true free safety I remember coming out that teams absolutely loved was Malik Hooker, right? Out of Ohio State.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So when I look at Calen Bullock and when I watch Kam Kitchens, I wrote down the exact same thing. Outstanding, excellent range. Guys that you could play as a high post free safety on the top of the roof by themselves, and they can cover sideline to sideline and make quarterbacks pay for testing the deep waters, thinking that everything is sweet when it's really not. So those are the two names that I wanted to invoke, Keith, off the top, because their games really impressed me.
So I want to ask this question. And first of all, I agree with you because that was the top two safeties for me, right? Calen Bullock and Calen Bullock from USC and Kamren Kinchens, the safety from Miami. But when I watched them, DP, were these well-rounded safeties? That was the question mark for me. And so I kind of have two questions, right? Is this what the NFL wants? Or is this just what college is producing, right? Like, is this just what is being set at our lap? Like, because we're looking at this safety class, and like we said, there's two free safeties at the top, right? And I would talk about Calen Bullock. Like, one thing to talk about is how well he play in the box, right? Like how well will
Right.
he tackle? So I want to ask you that question, DP, from your perspective, right? Is this a situation where this is a trend, or is this just what college football has given us with this specific draft class?
I think it's with this specific draft class because the NFL had to adjust, in my opinion, Keith, because the single high free safeties, they almost like dinosaurs. They became extinct. Like you didn't find guys that you really felt comfortable. Yeah, there was a few prospects here and there that experts and analysts would be like, yeah, he could play on the roof. He could play up top by himself. And it's like, then you watch the tape, you're like, I don't trust the range, man. I don't trust the speed. And you turn on the tape for these two, and you see that exact same thing. So I feel like NFL teams will cover these guys a little bit more than what we've seen over these two especially. But I'll throw in Michigan's Rod Moore as well. It's a guy I watched, and I'm like, okay, he could play on the roof as well. I won't say he has the exact same range as them, but he has good range. But when you ask, is Calen Bullock and Kam Kitchens well-rounded? Calen, I don't think as much as I like. Cam to me is better. I think Cam is a much more well-rounded guy because I remember writing down when I was watching Cam, not only can he play as a high post safety by himself on the roof, he can come down. You can give him some robber assignments where he's showing as a high safety and works back downhill and plays as a guy that's going to rob and take away throws in the short to intermediate range of the field. Of course, the ball tracking at all levels, right? He's got an interception. I can't remember which game it was, but he has an interception where he's playing robber technique. They try to throw an out route. He identifies it, breaks on it, and undercut it over by the sideline. So you see that range because I will say this, Keith, the range conversation is twofold. You got guys who have backward range, right? They can get into a back pedal, flip their hips, and cover. Then you got guys that have range going downhill, right? Which we'll talk about the other Miami safety who has some range coming downhill later on. But I think when I watch Kam Kitchens, I think he is better than Bullock because I think he's a better tackler. He can be a +1 guy in the run game. Where if you remember that Utah game where Utah running all over USC and giving them, being physical with them, I saw some things with Calen Bullock being as the final, like you said, that last line of defense. Where in open field, he's a thin build too. You know what I mean? He's kind of built like a corner. He's built like an outside corner.
Very thin, very thin.
And very thin. So it's like you see the tackling ability, it's just not all the way there. And I think that's where the biggest thing for me is. So like I just when I looked at those two guys, I'm like, all right, how's the NFL? Remember last year I said we're gonna see how much the NFL devalues running backs with the 2023 running back class come around. And we had 4 off the board within the first 3 rounds, 4 or 5 or something like that. Like we saw 2 inside the top 15, right? So I feel like these two guys, along with Rod Moore, they have the potential and the skill set to make defensive coordinators run to their GMs and listen, man, I watched tape on listen, I know we play a lot too high, but if we want to get back into some more versatile coverages, I got some prospects that we could put as a single high, and it gives us a little bit more flexibility and still protect against the explosive plays.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with this, and I'm gonna say this, and this is how I feel early on with this conversation is that we're gonna have to be very careful, right? In where we're projecting these guys as far as scheme fits. And I'm gonna even go as far as to this also, right? Malik Hooker being the last free safety / one high guy that the NFL really liked. Let's be completely honest, right? Like he's had a couple good years, but there has been injuries, right? Like injuries in his career to where it's kept him from being a consistent player. And I don't think that bodes well for, the smaller safety because they're going to think about the same things, especially Calen Bullock with the collisions, right? People are going to think about, okay, you're 185 pounds. How many times can you, run the alley and collision these big Saquon Barkleys, Derrick Henrys, and so forth and so on. So that's definitely going to be a talking point. And that's something that, we just have to be responsible, right? With where we put these guys. And that's why we're going to do the work. And I would tell our listeners, right? Like obviously listen to us, but pay attention to the people that are telling you like, hey, specifically, these are where these safeties need to fall and need to land because they're probably going to be scheme fit safety. But DP, let's keep this thing going, right? Like we're not just talking about those two safeties. There's some other names that we want to invoke in on our, on YouTube, right? On the show sheet, right? We have versatile hybrids. And there's a lot of versatile guys, but there's also another name that I want to name that's in your neck of the woods that I may want to throw into this conversation. So coming up next, man, we're going to get into these versatile safeties that, can emerge and that can play different positions. We talked about the free safety. Let's talk about the strong safety hybrids.
Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So with draft prep underway for the up-and-coming season, let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Looking to make a smooth turn in fantasy football snake drafts with the last pick of the first round and the first pick of the second round? Then you catch an initial spark with two elite NFC East wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb and A.J. Brown, a letter-perfect, guaranteed early fit. Count on Lamb to drive Dak Prescott and Dallas's new look passing game to big numbers, and Brown revving up Jalen Hurts. Downfield throwing often again in Philadelphia. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With eBay's guaranteed fit in over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, tail lights, alternators, shocks, struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it. And they'll make sure it's the right fit for your car, because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the very first time. So go forth, switch the gears, crank up the AC, baby, and say goodbye to sweating if your ride needs a little fixing up, because now you know you'll always be set up for success from the get-go. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, everything your vehicle is calling for is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Versatile hybrid safeties. This is what the league This is what the league actually is right now, Keith. Like the Calen Bullocks and the single high guys, they've been kind of pushed out mainly because, like we talked about, not having a surplus of those. But there's a surplus of guys that's going to check the height, weight, and athletic testing boxes that will play close to the line of scrimmage, man up in the nickel, and even give you some matchups against tight ends. So who did you want to go ahead and highlight?
I wanted to talk about Andrew Mukuba. I think that he has well-rounded, right? The upside in the ball production does not match Kamren Kinchens' 6 interceptions, right? You're not going to get that, or Calen Bullock's. I think Calen Bullock had a good bit of interceptions either.
Yeah, like 5 or 6.
But I think when you watch the film, you can see the range, you can see the versatility. It's a guy that I think can kick down a nickel, right? Like and play some of that. But then he's also, this is where I kind of give him the upper leg on a couple of those guys, is where I don't mind playing him closer to the line of scrimmage and putting him in the mix. He looks and appears to be a more filled out player and looks more comfortable around the line of scrimmage. So I think when it's all said and done, maybe you don't get the elite level ball range that some of these other guys provide, but maybe you're getting a more complete guy in an Andrew Mukuba.
No, listen, Mukuba, like Drew is so talented, man. I think the pro comp I had for him was Jimmy Ward, where Jimmy Ward,
that's a pretty good player.
Exactly. Like, when you look at him, I think size-wise, they're very similar. But Jimmy Ward plays some outside corner. He played deep safety. He played box safety. He played nickel. +1 in the run game. He's a Swiss Army knife that is super versatile, that can do so many different things and wear all those different hats for the defense. We saw a lot of that especially when he's healthy for the San Francisco 49ers. Now he's in Houston with D'Amico Ryans with the Texans, right? So when I looked at Mukuba, the main thing now is that, and I interviewed him on the Locked On Clemson podcast. You can go to YouTube or the Apple Podcast, Spotify, check out that interview. A outstanding young man. And, we talked about just that year 2 jump for him, getting back to playing the type of ball he believes he can play. He knows he's talented enough to play, because last year was a different system with Wes Goodwin as the defensive coordinator compared to Brent Venables back in 2022, 2021, 2020, so forth and so on. So no, Mukuba can literally do everything you just talked about, and that ability to play in the box and blitz the quarterback and play with a fearless mentality.
That's what I was about to
Where
say is when I and not to cut you off, but when I
No, you
when I
good.
watch them, the word like tenacious comes to mind. You know what I'm saying? Like it's words like that, and I think that's what's gonna jump off the screen. And that's what much like a Brian Branch last year, right? Me and you both, we pegged it earlier. We was like, look, I don't think this guy runs a 4.4. Like we you know what I'm saying? Like we said it in TDN meetings, we said it on the podcast. Like we don't see it, and then he got to the combine and ran a 4.5. But you still seeing this guy go fairly high. Why? Because of the tenacity he plays with, the fearless attitude, the passion that he has for the game. I think Mukuba has some of that same DNA inside of him. When we're talking about just playing a safety position. DP, we talked about Mukuba. You're locked on Clemson. Make sure y'all go check that out, man, because it was a really good interview. And like we said, man, that's the glimpse that you get into these prospects where the teams, right? That's why they want to interview these guys, to know who they're getting on their team. So make sure y'all go check out the interview. But DP, I know there's one guy back at the U. This guy is 6'5". 220 that you want to talk about, man. So go ahead, talk to the people about safety James Williams from University of Miami.
Man, Keith, are you talking about building a strong safety in a lab? That's James Williams, man. Like, I'm gonna tell you a name. This is I'm not gonna say it's not like very long ago, but it was probably 5-6 years ago. Obi Melinfonu, I think when he came out of I think it was UConn. He was a tall, long, bigger safety. They called him the tight end eraser when he was coming out of college, because he could man up tight ends because of his size and athleticism. When I watch Big James Williams, him and Kitchens they mesh so well together in terms of blending those two different styles. He has the outstanding height and weight combination. He's more of a low hole safety. What was it, JL Skinner last year, being that strong safety, heavy hitter, rangy, that range traveling and triggering downhill in the run game. You see that with James Williams. He's going to be, he projects more so as a big nickel, big dime, versatile defender that you're talking about being able to pull, dear God, if he got drafted by the Patriots, you pull off a Jawan Bentley off the field on third downs if you like, and you could put him as your big nickel, big dime type of backer, because they're almost like, even though he's like 20 pounds lighter, they look about the same size. That's how big this dude is, man. But you saw some flashes of instincts and ball skills, be able to jump underneath routes and everything like that. He could start off with as a too high safety, deep back, and then work downhill as a robber, and a guy coming in as a rover as well, just manning the middle. And I just want to see him. I think this year, I want to see him play a little bit more. I know defense coordinators don't do a ton of it, but I want to see him if he can cover tight ends man to man, right? Because with that size, physically, you're the optimal choice to go up against the Darren Wallers and the Travis Kelce's and George Kittles when they detach from the line of scrimmage and they're in the slot or out wide, rather than trying to put a 5'10" nickel corner that's just not strong enough. They might be athletic enough, but they're not strong enough. I think James Williams has the size and strength to do it, but does he have the actual coverage skills? And that's why he's on my radar as one of these versatile hybrids.
So I want to get into with James Williams. Is he a linebacker? And the reason
I wrote that down too.
And the reason I asked him that, because I'm gonna tell you who I thought of, and this was just somebody from last year's draft, was when I initially saw him and saw the movement skills, I thought of DeMarvion Overshown. But I also thought that he was better instinctually in the box than what DeMarvion was. Like he's one step, because I've watched at the Draft Network. I had Texas in my reader for 3 years, right? So I've been watching DeMarvion since he was a sophomore, right? And so he was a converted safety, right, from high school. And I think his first year of college, he played safety to in the box, right? Because he was 6'2", 220 pounds with the long arms and everything else. And he was kind of behind with the run diagnosis, right? But I see James Williams, he appears to be on a higher level than what DeMarvion Overshown was diagnosing a run. And I know James he's not a thick guy, right? Like he's not carrying around 240, 250 pounds. It's probably 220, 225. But I wondered, I'm like, okay, is he one of the better linebackers in this draft class if he declares or classifies himself as a linebacker, just as a linebacker prospect. And I wonder if, I was trying to see, how did that come off to you when you watched him? Did you, go back and forth on, is this guy a safety or a linebacker? And not is he a linebacker in a negative light, but is he a damn good linebacker, right? Like that's what I thought about.
No, that's just, I wrote that exact same thing down. I was like, that's why, he made the hybrids list. And I was like, all right, if you could play him, if you want to play him as strong safety, you can, but you also can play him as that pull a linebacker off and let him play nickel and dime. If teams typically when they think, offenses, they say, okay, well, you put a safety down there. All right, cool. We could just run draw. You know what I mean? We can inside zone right at, not with him. You know what I mean? Because this is a big, strong kid, man. And I think he could actually thrive at linebacker if you wanted him to. And it's crazy. We see all these other linebackers who are legit 220, 225, 230. And then I'm thinking back and I'm looking at his body type compared to theirs in terms of muscle mass and density. And he's bigger. Like, you know what I'm saying? So
that's
it's just like, okay,
like,
he probably could block shed and stack and shed and handle the rigors of the run game.
And you think about where the NFL is right now with linebacker play. Like, let's be honest, right? It's not consistently high across the board, right? And that's why you've seen the Detroit Lions, while Jack Campbell was able to go so high, he wasn't the most athletic guy. He was just the best versus the run as far as what the Lions needed, as far as somebody to play against the run. And so if James Williams is a combination of both, where you see a pretty good athlete, has good length, and he can play the run, then you have the potential for them to draft this guy as just like you said, a versatile hybrid, but more of a linebacker hybrid, and then with safety as his secondary, option. But DP, I think that was good, right? Bringing up Andrew Mukuba, James Williams, two guys in different lights, but guys that both can catapult. Like I consistently say, these are guys that can catapult themselves, just with really good play. I'm really intrigued by Andrew Mukuba. I can't wait to see what this Clemson defense do, coming off of Jeremiah Trier and Barry Carter. Also, this Clemson defense should be locked and loaded and ready to roll. But DP, let's get into your favorite segment, man, the sleeper safeties. So we about to jump in, get into our bag, right, and pull out those names that not too many people are talking about within the safety position.
Rise and shine, family. It's time to wake up. We are finishing this thing out with them sleeper safeties that you got to know. You got to know who these guys are, because if your team's drafting round 3, 4, 5, and you need a defender in your back end, but you don't know who they are, that's why we're here to tell you about them. And Keith, I want to throw out Cole Bishop from Utah. And he reminded me a little bit of a guy that I liked. I think he went undrafted last year, played for Wisconsin, and that was John Torchino. Kind of low hole safety, versatile, played some nickel overhang in the slot, stuff like that. Be a +1 in the run game. Shows just the instincts, the willingness to be physical and tackle in the run game, as well as be able to drop off in the zones and read route concepts and get to his landmarks. And a guy that you think about these strong safety, nickel hybrids, things like that. You think about the Adrian Phillips from the New England Patriots, guys that can play inside the box. I think he can do that. Like I said, I think he's a good player. For some reason, he doesn't get Utah doesn't get, it's Utah, so they don't get a ton. They don't get a ton of pub. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
in terms of draft prospects.
I don't even think Utah like it. Like they just kind of go with the flow, right? They don't even try. They play good football, right? They play good football.
They play very well coached. They play good football. But Cole Bishop is a guy I think that a lot of the draft community needs to know, as well as Ohio State's Lathan Ransom. Right. Just kind of watching him, another strong safety. He's got even though he's a strong safety, he's not very dense in terms of his build. But they play him as a strong safety. You see a guy that is alignment fluid, like he can move all over the defense. He wears a lot of hats. He can move around and do different things. He could blitz, play closer to the line of scrimmage, on tight ends, because they tried to match him up against, it was a little tough. They tried to match him up against Brock Bowers. But the way that, Brock Bowers is, and then the way that Tom Monken does things too, offensively, It didn't put him in the best situation. I think he gave up like over 100 yards receiving in that game. So Brock Bowers a little bit to handle, but you see a guy that has pretty adequate average burst in terms of the click and close when he's put in those type of situations. But tackling, he's got to get better as a
tackler. He's got to become more consistent, right? Talking about Lathan Ransom. That's just what he needs. Just be more consistent.
He's willing.
Yeah, he's willing, and you see that he's a plus athlete. He's a guy that I think even throughout, like if he stays the same, right? Which we're hoping that all of these guys get better, right? If he stays the same, he's going to be a very tough evaluation. I can see some guys having a second round on him, and I can see some guys having a 5th round grade on him, just because there's such high variance in what you see. You see the good athlete, you see the willing tackler. Sometimes he's an effective tackler, but he has to be more consistent.
And that versatility to play man to man in the slot.
Yeah, that's huge, right? So I can see him. He's going to be a polarizing name in this draft class. DP, I want to bring up a guy who 2 years ago he was a talk of the town down in Arkansas, and that is Texas safety, because he transferred. He came back home to the state of Texas. Texas safety Jalen Cattle on his guy is 5'9", right? 5'8". He's not very big. That's all I'm gonna tell you. He's not very big, but 200 pounds. But when I tell you this guy will light you up, right? Like he is going to get some personal foul penalties because he is going to try to hurt somebody on the offensive side of the football. This Texas defense, we've been saying over the past 15 years since Vince Young left, right? Or they played Alabama in that was 2009 when Colt McCoy got injured, right? Like ever since then, we've been saying this Texas team needs to become more tougher, right? Like they need to be a more tough team. This guy instantly makes Texas tough. Point blank, period. Like just him by himself, he's instantly going to make Texas a tough team. So be on the lookout, in Texas fans, Big 12 fans out there, be on the lookout for this guy because he is going to have some splash plays. He just has to stay healthy, man. I think it's been a rotator cuff or something in his shoulder that has kept him out the past year and a half, 2 years. I don't know how that's going to affect his draft stock, right? Because he's also smaller, but it's definitely going to, hopefully it doesn't, but I'm kind of notching that down, right? As far as, it may affect his draft stock. He just reminds you of that Bob Sanders we talked about, or I don't know why this name came to me, like Dante Whitner. So just some of those like old
stuff. I like that one.
I don't even know why they came to me, DP. I can't tell you the last time I thought about
I think it's similar style of play. Dante Whitner was a hitter.
Yeah, I can't tell you the last time I thought of Dante Whitner. I don't know why that name came to mind, but he reminds me of that type of football player, man. But he's definitely a very intriguing name to go through.
Nah, for me, I think to close it out for me, another versatile safety that does a little bit of everything. Damani Richardson over at Texas A&M, man, 6'1", 6'2", about 210. So he's got the NFL build and size as a prototypical today's day and age strong safety that he plays a lot in the box. He plays over 300 of his like 500-600 snaps came close to the line of scrimmage in the box, but he also played in the nickel as well. So a guy that, shows the ability in terms of awareness, spatial awareness, and then football awareness as well, down at distance, properly getting into his drops. Because you coach DBs, how many times you guys had to get on the player because it's 3rd and 7, but you drop back 10 yards instead of getting to the sticks, right? To protect the sticks. You drop back 10, 11 yards, getting out of the range and giving them the sticks to be able to curl in or square in, whatever, and make a quick catch and dive for the first down and keep the chains moving. So you see that with him, +1 in the run game, very willing tackler as well. Just a guy that, for me, man, I'm just looking at him like, all right, you want to see. Again, I think similar to James Williams, when you got that size on you as an advantage for you, can you consistently cover these, not just tight ends, but like even big body receivers, right? Like if DeAndre Hopkins slides in, if Treylon Burks slides into the slot and you walk down into the nickel, can you handle that assignment adequately? I don't need you to be Richard Sherman, Darrell Revis, or any of these high-level corners, but can you do enough to deter the quarterback from thinking you're the mismatch and trying to pick on you? Then they start running no huddle, running tempo, keeping you in these positions and keep trying to go at you, because we know NFL offenses love to find a mismatch. So for Richardson, man, I think with his size, athleticism, I think he's a good athlete from what I saw. I don't know his testing numbers, but just what I've seen on tape. I think for his size, he looks to move well. And then, like I said, just being a guy that's willing to play close to the line of scrimmage, like that toughness, that physicality. He's got some dog and swag to him as well. Yeah, he's a name that everybody definitely need to keep an eye on during the 2023 college football season.
Yep. With DP, that wraps up not only the safeties, that wraps up our scouting notebook, the 2024 early on summer scouting notebook, man. We get to head into a training camp, right, where we have a really fun training camp series coming up where we're going to go through this thing. We either trying to decide, right? We're making a last minute decision if we're going to go through this thing team by team or division by division, but that is going to be coming up along with, we have a Damian Parsons mock draft Monday coming up. That'll be fun because I get to go through Damian's mock draft and kind of pick on him a little bit about a couple of his selections. But DP, wrapping up this safety class, right? I think that it's split, right? Like it's free safeties and the strong safeties. And I'll be really interested. What I'm looking for heading into the season is if there's a guy that emerges to be a complete safety. That's what I'm looking for, right? If there's just a guy that I just write safety, I don't have to put FS or free safety or post guy or strong safety box guy. I can just literally put safety by there. So for all the listeners, that's what I'm looking for heading into this draft cycle. Is there a safety that emerges as just a true safety?
And like the saying goes, cream rises to the top. We're gonna see who's the cream of the crop in terms of this class at the safety position, and see who is the best all-around guy after the season. But as always, go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts and get the latest episode as soon as it's available. Thank y'all for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day, Monday through Friday. Happy Friday to y'all, man. What did Keith just tell you? It's mock draft Monday coming back. It's my mock draft, so Keith will be able to go in, pick it apart, picks 1 through 10. Or just, you know this, you know the vibes. You know what we do here. You know what we do. We know how we do it. So we're gonna have a lot of fun with that. In terms of Twitter, you can find Keith Sanchez at the Talent Code. Me, Damian Parson, DP_NFL. Talk to us because we do talk back. Come and join the conversation again on Monday on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.